It's Friday, and our Healthy Friday conversation today is around the stigma around men's mental health. Like I said, it's conversations that we usually have under the cover of darkness, and we don't talk about it too much, isn't it? Because, a man is not supposed to have weaknesses. A man is not supposed to be worried, or at least be overtly expressive about those worries, isn't it? And we're debunking the myths of our times. And so our Healthy Friday conversation is unmasking masculinity, breaking the stigma around men's mental health. And look, when we talk about this, we are touching everything in society today, whether we are touching the issues around why did Albert Ojwang die? Who killed him? Why can't we have people who will open their mouths and talk about the real situation? Why can't we have people to step down from high horses around some of these things? It's unmasking masculinity. And that's the conversation that we have this hour. We talk with two people, and one of them is already here this morning. Trizah Kainika, I beg your pardon, is a psychologist and CEO of All Smiles Therapy Center. And she's in the hot seat of the Situation Room this morning. Trizah, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Very well. How are you doing?
Fine, thank you. And thank you so much for having me this morning.
Karibu sana.
Thank you.
You're going to be joined shortly by Danish Odongo, who is the host of Manspective Africa, really, and has been quite vocal about being vocal, and he joins us in a short while, and he'll tell us a little bit about his story and why it's necessary to have these conversations. But we're going to start off today and get you to settle down in the hot seat just a little bit. We go around the African continent every week. We land in a different country, and then we take something back. Not like the colonialists, but we take their wisdom. And they give us proverbs. Don't ask us how, it just happens. And Dennis is going to tell you what country we're in this week. And we'd love to get your interpretation of a proverb that he's going to share and tell us what you think about that. All right.
Great.
So today we are in the East Africa region in Africa, and the country that we're talking about calls itself the Pearl of Africa. You know that country?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and it is a country that enjoys immense amount of rain. It's considered a breadbasket of the region, and that notwithstanding as well, it has a president who's been in power for around 39 years now. And as well, it is a country where, when you talk about dancing and shaking the waist, the men in that country know how to do that very well. We're talking about Uganda.
Wow.
Yeah, talking about Uganda.
Sure.
Yeah, and the proverb that comes from that country, a bird will always use the feathers of another bird to build its nest.
Mm-hmm.
A bird will always use the feathers of another bird to build its nest. What do you make of that?
That we need community. We are never strong alone. It's never all that serious. We need other people. Yeah.
Well put.
Indeed. Can't do it by yourself, can you? And there have been many a conversation about mental health, but there's not been enough a conversation around how men feel about speaking out, and that unfortunately too much is held within. And I guess we want to start off from that point, at least before Danish gets here, for us to weave these conversations together. And we've tried to understand it for the very longest time. Not to say that those who are overtly expressive then have a better time with mental health, or do they?
Not really. We start by saying mental health is not all about men. It's actually a societal thing. It's affects the entire society. Because who are these men that we talk about? Our dads, our brothers, our husbands, our sons. And that means when one man is affected, an entire community is affected. So we first need to look at this from a holistic perspective, not just from where men are seated. Yeah.
So we talk about masculinity, and just the word of it alone, it is seen as a societal construct that differs from different cultures in the world. And one of those is a man is supposed to be strong. A man is supposed to be the provider. You're not supposed to show emotions, because you are as strong as a rock. A rock don't crack. That's what they say. But as we look at the society as it goes, we find that men tend to be very emotional, only that they don't know how to share that. So then, how do we bring the balance such that, fine, you need to provide, you need to be strong, you need to be all this, but then again, it is okay for you to speak up and seek for help?
We bring in the balance by first demystifying stigma around it. You've said it so well. Men should not cry. Men should never ask for help. Men should never share when they're going through issues. They should not talk about it because they're supposed to be strong. Men are men, and so men are rocks. So we need to demystify and say, no, that's not the case. It's healthy and it's okay to cry, because when we suppress their feelings, what are we expecting them to do? Yeah, so they are highly affected because we do not give them a room. There is like a pattern. This is so structured. This is how a man should behave. And you know what? It doesn't start from when a man is grown. It starts right from when they are kids, you know. You look at a boy child, and you're telling them, you know, boys should not cry. What are you telling them? What about, I hear you, I'm here, you validate how they're feeling. How can I be of help to you? It's okay, you can ask for help. Yeah.
Where did that come from? Where did this thing come from that men shouldn't cry? I mean, I don't think that tears are just the purview of one gender. Where did this thing come from that men shouldn't cry, or that men should not be expressive about what they feel? Where did that come from?
Starting that we are Africans, it's a taboo. A man should be out there in the jungle. They should be fighting with lions and all that. So there is the expectation, because you are a man, yours is to protect, and you protect physically. Forgetting there is also emotional protection. Yes.
You see, it stems up from the, like she says, men are seen as warriors. You're just supposed to go to the field and fight. Even if you go during the pre-colonial times, it is the men on the forefront. So then again, what kind of a warrior are you when you're crying? So you look at that and you extrapolate in terms of the cultures that we have come to adopt, and you find once a man has gone through circumcision, and at that point, you're tough as a rock and whatnot. But then again, it's about time that you break all these stereotypes that does exist. And one would say, even in 2025, we still have our own cultures and all the stereotypes that do exist. So how do we have these conversations such that we don't lose our culture, but those traits of our cultures that don't mean well in the modern day, we get rid of them? Are we ready to have that conversation as Africans?
It's a very hard one. Because when you look at mental health in general, people don't even realize there is a lot of labeling out here. Mwentawazimu, who is this person? And from the mental health, we can tell you we do not have anyone who is a Mwentawazimu. It's either they are having a condition, and that condition has a name, and they are not defined by that condition. I'm yet to see someone being called, this is cancer, this is diabetes, this is asthma. But we are so much stereotyping when it comes to mental health. So it all starts from there. And let's look at it this way. When a man goes to another man to complain of what they are going through, what is most likely to happen? Get another bottle. Do this. Let's walk out. No, you are man. You need to be man enough. We don't even offer them that audience. So it all starts by saying it's okay to be culturally right, and it's also okay to create that awareness. Being culturally right does not mean that we are not human in the first place, because we have feelings, thoughts, and all that gets to the output of our behaviors. So before we rush into judging, let's get to know, where are you coming from? Yes.
To look at the genesis of things then really sometimes helps us to deconstruct some of these issues. I am still stuck. I am still trying to understand the connection between being hurt or expressing oneself through tears, the connection between that and weakness. Because there must be a connection that has brought us to the place whereby we can then go further and say that should somebody express their pain or show that pain through crying, that we are then equating it to weakness. I'm still looking for the connection, because if we can't make the connection, then it would be very, very, very difficult then for us to get people to start to share and not be labeled as weak. So what is that?
Wow. Tears. You talk about tears. If you can go back even to childhood, you'd be beaten. You cry and you are beaten again for crying, which means in the first place, you should not be crying. So tears, they were never considered as a sign of expressing pain, hurt, and what you're going through. They were just considered to be just, a result, an input of something, a symptom, but not to see or to look at it from the, the heaviness of, oh, wow, this person is breaking down. And so here came the connection that when you are crying, any other person, if you're a man, should not be able to see your tears. Because seeing your tears, it means now you become someone who is very weak, someone who is incapable of doing anything. And so if we are expecting you to be out there to fight on our behalf, how are you going to fight when we can still see your tears? But does that mean that really they don't cry? No.
Do the people who label others as weak when they do express this, are they okay?
They are stereotyped. They are informed by some false beliefs. And they want to, in a way, come with a way of mentoring this person and shape them in their own liking, but not in the liking that they should actually be. Yeah.
You see, when you talk about crying and shedding tears, I remember in my formative years, I was still young, and the moment my dad is my hero. I keep saying that guy, salute, But I remember there was this one time when my aunt Margaret passed on, and very tight with my dad. And I remember that was the first time I saw my dad's tear. And at that point, having grown up in a setting where my peers would say a man does not cry, but I saw that at home of someone who I considered to be my hero. And I remember asking Dad, like, what's up? What's going on? And he said, this is my sister. I loved her. She's passed on. And I feel that pain. And the only way for me to express that, I can't control these tears. They just have to come back. And what that did is the expression of pain as a man does not have to be bottled in simply because it is a society where you're supposed to be a rock. You're not supposed to cry. And that meant that it's okay for a man to cry. And that is not seen as weakness. But that was only made possible because my hero at that point would express himself that way. And it became easier because I cry. I'll not lie. It's painful. I shed tears. You judge me all you want, but that's just life. So how do we have these communication now from between men themselves to understand it's okay, that even for their partners, for the community, that when you see a man cry, that it's okay, give them a hug, sit down with them, buy them a chocolate, not a bottle. If it's a bottle, maybe of water.
Great. It's by first normalizing that it's okay not to be okay. We start from there. It's okay not to be okay. And from there is the acceptance and acknowledgement that actually I am going through something. And from there comes the understanding that if this person is going through something, they actually need to share because they need help. So first start with the person, even before we go to the society, because the time we give them that room to judge us. Why? Because we also want to protect ourselves by just assuming everything is okay. If I may ask, it's greetings to ask, how are you? In rare cases, someone will say, I am not okay.
Yeah.
It's always, no, I'm fine, thank you. But deep down, is that person okay? So over the time, we've been able to normalize what is actually should not be normal. Because when you're not okay, you should express and say, well, the day looks nice, though personally I'm not okay today. And you see with that, if I come here and I tell you I am not okay today, it will lead to you asking, share with me what's happening. And with that, you start by expressing. Because as you're saying, our mental health results from a lot of accumulation of unresolved issues until they get to a point where one doesn't know how to navigate through. They do not know there is help available. But even before help, even the coping mechanism. And so we are made just be there and get to know it's about you and the issues that you're going through, because at the end of the day, you are a man. So you can imagine there is so much expectation We are talking of someone who is working, of a dad, someone in the society. And when again we look at a man, there is an entire extended family, but this person is crashing deep down. We say it's very unfortunate that mental health issues, unlike for physical health issues where you can see someone bleeding, you can see, you are able to even feel it yourself. But for mental health, it's so overwhelming that only takes time. And by the time you are realizing you are not okay, you look back and you have a train of issues that has resorted to that. And most of the cases, very, very much unfortunate. Yeah.
Do we have adults? And like we said, Danish Odongo is going to join us in a few minutes because then he'll be able to also speak about this from experience. But do we have, if we look at society today, do we have grown-ups who are dealing with unresolved issues that would then, contribute to a mental health problem that we are not dealing with?
Oh, yeah. A lot more. Let's look at one of the causes of current mental health issues, both men, women, in adults, childhood traumas. How are we brought up? Were we brought up the right way? And were we given the chance to resolve the issues that we went through? So in most cases, you realize that someone is not able to follow orders because they didn't know order when they were growing up. You also realize when you talk about childhood traumas, even our family dynamics, let's look at marriage in adulthood. Someone will marry not to complement, not for the right reasons, but they end up marrying to fill in a void in their lives. Maybe it's that mom who was absent, that dad who was absent, or maybe who was also present. And over the time you realize, I married my mom, I married my dad, and there is up to the much that you can do with your parent. So after some times, it will expire. And hence, what will be presented to us will be divorce. But if someone was given a chance to resolve the issues, that could not have happened.
How do you pull back, or how do you claw back that now when you have adults who are formed in their behavior, they're formed in action, but are still going through this trauma? What do you do? Because it's like now we're saying, well, you don't see well, you wear glasses. What happens now is that you have the trauma, then everybody starts seeing a therapist.
First is to realize, even before you say that now, you can see and all that, get to realize and first get to identify what are the issues. There is something we call presenting issues. Many of the times people will come, I don't get along with my boss. Even my social relationships, they are not perfect and all that. I'm in a dysfunctional family. They are all presenting issues because, again, as we say, for mental health, we feel the symptoms, and symptoms many of the times they are the results. But we need to dig deeper to the underlying, and we get to know, why are you like this? Maybe it's your early childhood attachment. You were brought up in a very avoidance attachment style, where because you wanted maybe your parents to be there or your caregivers to be there, they were never there. They were busy working. We are busy working 24/7. To a level that we forget we are supposed to be there also for the kids that we are bringing up. We are so transactional. And so when they come, they're not able to relate with people well. Why? They were taught love is transactional. So if I'm not asking about that email, that report, how are we dealing? But that's not what society is all about. So you realize over the time, people will have more issues. And when we are able to dig deeper, like what you've asked, we are able to revisit from the childhood, we start processing. And with that, it's a way that you can correct that behavior.
So there's a question that has been asked by our listeners. The world wants men to cry and speak up, but is the world ready?
The world is not yet ready until first we understand that mental health is about society, and empowering a girl child does not mean it's competition, because that's where it all began. We were busy empowering this girl child, forgetting we wanted to equip them to be on their own, but it came to be what a man can do, a woman can do better. That's a wrong phrase. It should not be there. It should not be a competition. In any way, we should be able to complement each other. So we must start by embracing who is this boy child, so that we can say now we are ready. Because how are we ready for you if you're still competing other than being able to complement each other?
Danish Odongo joins us as the host of Manspective Africa, and beyond just being a host, I think also then a personal experience. Danish, good morning.
Good morning. My apologies for being late.
Many have asked us, how do we have a conversation about men's health issues, and we're talking to a woman? But it's all the same. Yeah. Thank you for coming, and we're going to go to a break in just a bit, but let's get a perspective from you before we do that. And we've already started to dabble, and we're saying, are we dealing with a lot of men who have a lot of trauma, and how do we see the manifestation of that in today's world? How would I then be having a conversation with someone or be in a relationship with someone and realize, oh, hang on, something's not quite right here?
Yeah. So thank you so much for that question. So my personal experience in 2019, I really did get into a very bad mental health breakdown, and guess what led to it? It was literally a breakup, a romantic relationship breakup, which eventually sort of like was like pulling a thread that connected all my life. But then I realized that all these things were, bad, and things were going wrong. And then I went through treatment, went through therapy, was on medication, I did a lot of journaling, and then eventually I recovered. So if you talk to me about this question in 2019, I would not have given you an answer, because I was just like many men. Because the very same things that can appear as, signs and symptoms of a man who's not mentally healthy are seen as really part and parcel of masculinity.
Such as,
for example, anger, fits of rage. Sometimes you feel like there's just this overwhelming rage, and we imagine that that's actually masculinity. But also sometimes just being withdrawn, and drugs and substance abuse, which is a major issue that many men deal with. But we imagine that you're not a man enough unless you're drinking a beer with your buddies and drinking until you're completely passed out, and we imagine that all these things are good. But what I've come to learn is that majority of some of these behaviors and traits we call masculine are actually, negative coping mechanisms to deep-seated psychological issues which we have not been taught to talk about, neither are we equipped to address. So what do? We bury them under, and then we show up wounded, and then we are bleeding on everybody else who did not cut us.
How do you know that you have this issue, Danish?
It's very difficult to know, honestly. It's very difficult to know, because if we talk about now the signs and symptoms, there are so many mental health challenges, many, over 300 by the way, and each has its own, sets of signs and symptoms. But let me talk about what men face a lot, which is drugs and substance abuse. If you are sensitive about that drink that you take, when people ask you, you're taking a little bit too much, and then you get offended, that is one of the first symptoms that you need to talk about this. If you're impulsive about it, if you cannot control it, if you cannot do work without a drink or without a shot or without all these things, then that often becomes a major sign. And for me, what I've come to learn in my work with mental health is that drugs and substance abuse is just the tip of the iceberg. The real issue now is under. So, but then that's what's showing as a major thing that everybody can see. Yeah.
But you see, Danish, we live at a time as well where when a man, say, does not drink, understand what I mean? Yeah. And you just say, I don't drink, I'm easy. The next question is, hey, well, when it can play up, and so you find men as well, they find themselves not having an option, because if you say you don't drink, then you are a player. If you drink, then perhaps then you are that guy. So how do we then deal with such? Because damn if you do, damn if you don't.
And I think that's often what we tell, but we mostly tell that to Christian men. Either you are a player or you drink. But I think that's a very narrow way to actually segment men, and I think we do a lot of damage. When it comes to the things that are about men, we have ways to really give them very succinct words that are not always very comprehensive. One, they call it deadbeat. We don't know the context, we don't know the reason why, this, we don't give men grace, And we are very, he's angry, he's unavailable. We have words to describe men. But, for example, there's a lady who, attempted to kill her children in Kitengela. We were like, oh, let's support her. There's something wrong with her. There is this thing that is going on. But if a man did attempt to do that thing, would actually be very quick to, to take them in and lynch them through a mob injustice, because in a world where we're living in, men, the joy of men is not celebrated. How men experience life is not understood, because this world, while we say it's patriarchal, but I think it's deeply feminine.
Even just thinking about that, and I thought about, even the gifting. And I think that we have set up structures, and these are psychological structures. We've set them up, and we have almost immortalized those structures by the things then that we continue to speak and the things that we continue to say. And I think about my sons, and I say, I don't want a situation where these guys are going to grow up and they're not going to be able to express themselves because somebody has this fallacious construction about how one gender ought to be. And I think we do. I do agree with you, Danish. I think we've done men a disservice. And I think that we have focused on one gender at the expense of another. And I think that whether it's cultural, whether it's and I saw a comment, and we often bring in our audience here, and somebody said, well, you know what? It's only here in Africa where we say a crying man is a weak man. Go to other places. You won't hear that. In fact, somebody tells you that your strength is found when you are able to have a manifestation of that whatever weak feeling that we have described that you may be feeling. So we're going to come to you in just a minute, Trizah. But Danish, how then are we getting to a place where we can actually strip away, because we strip away these falsities, because that's what they are. And that we have many men in a very terrible situation today, and even still, the people who are with them don't know. I say, women don't know how to deal with a man who might be having an issue, because they themselves are thinking, how do I deal with this one who's supposed to be strong all the time? Yeah. How?
So on my Perspective show, which actually airs on KTN, by the way, 10:30 p.m. every Wednesday night, I've hosted... recently, I hosted a psychologist who told me something that really, really profound. She's a lady. Her name is Stella. She told me that the way we give care, or the way we talk about care is and I know this might sound controversial, but it's the truth. It's about, she called it feminine. So she said that psychology mostly is designed to deal with women, because majority of them are the ones who've gotten help, and therefore a lot of evidence and facts that have been used to develop all these models mostly are feminine. And then she said that it's very easy to miss the symptoms of depression in a man as compared to the symptoms of depression in a woman. Because for example, she told me that in a man, the symptom of depression might not be closing the windows and being moody and not working out. It might be that they're impulsive, they drive recklessly, they have fits of rage. Those could actually be masculine signs of depression, and so we miss that. But secondly is talk therapy. So talk therapy is the widely used model to deal with psychological issues. We have cognitive behavioral therapy and many forms of therapy, but talk therapy is what is used a lot here. But men don't respond to talk therapy really well. But we don't ask ourselves, what would psychology that meets the need of men look like? Would it be somewhere in a bundu, somewhere around fellow men in a fire with meat, doing therapy for men? How would it look like to really design these things that eventually can change? And why we don't do that is because we don't imagine the impact and the cost we are paying for neglecting men's mental health. We see it in accidents. Do you guys know that 80% of fatal road accidents, deaths in this road of Nairobi, they are men? Do you know that a huge chunk of, more women are diagnosed with HIV, but men 3 times die from HIV, yet they're diagnosed less because of health-seeking behaviors, which is still a masculinity issue. Do you know that...
Oh, hang on.
Yeah.
They're diagnosed because they've actually gone to seek healthcare. But men won't go to seek it, so they're not diagnosed. So the numbers show up because the women are going to seek the help. Yeah.
Women are seeking the help and they are adhering to treatment.
Okay.
Men are diagnosed, even though they are less, their numbers are less, but they don't adhere to treatment, because also this form of masculinity that imagines that taking antiretroviral therapy is weakness, or adhering to plan, eventually leads to more men dying by HIV, even though they are diagnosed less. So we have got to look at the cost cost of this toxic masculinity as a national disaster. I recently wrote an article which went really well, and it was about the death of Albert Ojwang. And I said, how can you be a big man in a big office with a big title, yet you are trailing a 31-year-old man who is a father and using the machinery, which he is the one who pays through his taxes to get him like a terrorist. You're a big man. You've been in this space for over 25 years. You have worked with bomb detonation. You've done all these things. But the problem is that if we don't address this masculinity, it will show up in leadership problem where we are weak. We have weak men who are dressed up in nice suits with big titles and big guns, and then they will brutalize the young men. Because, by the way, the biggest risk factor for any young man in this country, especially in urban areas, is a male police with a gun. Because the extrajudicial executions that happens in the informal settlements across this country, we have a huge number of tragedy, and because of men who have been taught that, oh, by the way, it's about muzzling how you feel, it's about being brutal, it's about being violent, it's about being aggressive, and then you hide all that by acquiring wealth. Now, wanakuuliza, well, what do you have? And all these things affect literally every level of the society. So even as we do the gender-based violence and the femicide, task force, I hope that the government can now begin to imagine a task force for men. And it's not to come and begin to say, oh, men don't cry. No, it is to look at the systemic issues that are the problems we are dealing with in our socio-economic and political landscape and try and trace it to this toxic strain of masculinity, this toxic strain of masculinity which lies to men that you are only as good as the car you drive, you're only as good as the money you make, you're only as good as your amount to expend violence, really. And then we see it having a problem in our level of society.
Is it time we take into consideration, Trizah, that these are things that are affecting across board? Because we often then think about mental health as the one that affects you in your sitting room when the curtains are drawn under the cover of darkness. But we never extrapolate it to society, to jobs, to government, to leadership. We never say that, hold on a minute, this strain could be the thing that's affecting and is exemplified in the issues that we see.
Yeah. I agree with you. When you look at leadership, the same way he's saying, there is a lot of reflection, because what we say is hurt people. So you grow. You yourself, you've not been able to deal with anything that you're going through. And so you'll become that person. The much you can do is to pour out, pain to other people. And this can only be felt when other people they are receiving. And that's why most of the people, it will take someone to say, I think you are not okay. Shouting, dictatorship, all these things you're seeing. Also, when someone wants to have everything by their own, could it be they're dealing with a void? They grew up in scarce, and so they want to refill what they never grew up with. Those are some of the things that are happening. Also, let's look at our offices. We've seen we are working male, female, but many other times we forget that we are all employees and we want to use the gender. It's okay for a female employee to be off duty and to call in sick, to call in that they want to go and take care of the kid. But what happens when it's on the opposite? When a male employee, many other times, I'm not saying all through, they call in, but why are you the one to go to their school? So you see the structure. We start by even telling them, you don't have, because a man, there is the roles for the men. We now start again talking about or having stigma around the roles for the men, and now we have the roles for women. And so when it comes to taking care of the children and all that, this should be for the women, and for the man, yours is just to go out there. Hence, at what time are you teaching them that you need to parent? What about the kids that are growing in this family? Who will they grow to look up to? Then a time comes, they've lost their identity, they are given power, they are in leadership. What are you expecting them to do? So it's so much. But one thing I can say is we've seen a very big improvement. Nowadays, men are also calling in. They are calling for help. They are coming for therapy. They've been able to recognize that this is not about me. This is not my label. This is not my title. This is not my name. They've been able to see that I have an issue, I'm not okay, and I need to have it dealt with.
You see, but we talk about, you've mentioned something that is very critical, which is on the modules being used, say, in psychological spaces to seek treatment and assistance. And for a very long time, it has been used of women. So it's pretty much designed to deal with issues around women. And here is a situation where the accidents we see, it is a lot of men causing these accidents. Perhaps it's a problem that we see. But when it comes, say, to dealing with that, no one has ever thought of, let's go for a road trip in a straight line and you have to follow each other during that time. If there is a conversation through walkie-talkies, because I've seen some guys, some YouTubers in America do that. Through walkie-talkies, people are sharing as they drive. And because the speed has been limited, at the end of the journey, say here to Mombasa, you find people have really poured out their hearts and a solution is being sought at the end of the journey. Now people sit in a fireplace and they have these conversations. So just in terms of going back to the curriculum that is being taught to psychologists on how to approach things differently, is that a way for us to start looking at solutions perhaps?
The first call is for men to join psychology because almost 80% of psychologists are also women. Yeah. The enrollment, I was with this college that does psychology, a man counseling center. They were telling us that, by the way, we're not having any men who are, enrolling to be psychologists. If you go to USIU PhD program, it's entirely women. If you go to Daystar postgraduate for psychology, almost 80% of them are women, So if we also don't frame psychology as a career that also men can pursue, because it's still a gendered conversation, because we imagine men to be on top of pylons like Kenya Power or Kengen and dealing with engineering.
Or with a big gun.
It's a big gun, exactly.
Yeah.
We don't imagine a man being a caregiver, because that is seen as the role of a woman. So, so these gendered conversations hurt all of us, But let me just add something also small. I like what you've said. But we don't often think about the man who cannot have a car.
Yes.
The man who cannot afford to take a day off.
There you go.
And the man who is riding a boda in my village in Ongechi in Nyando constituency. Because also the sort of I last year I worked with I was invited to a Kengen event, and of course I've seen Frank, their marketing and communication person, telling me that he's watching, and they brought all these Kengen men together in Nairobi, and it was a beautiful day for them to be impacted and for them to be empowered, and there were a series of conversations, health, money, and all this sort of stuff. So corporates are doing that and they're getting it right. But we must ask ourselves, how about that man who cannot take a day off? How does he process his frustration?
Or the man who is then sitting under the weight of expectation from people around him, including women. And it could be the mother, it could be the wife, it could be the daughter who is saying, well, here it is, and we're expecting you to be able to do 1, 2, 3. Yeah. And then I'm just imagining the conversations that are currently happening in the country today. And I'm thinking, right? If we are just looking within the police force, for example, we see them as the police. We don't see them as men or women. These are the police who we say, well, they've gone on wanton rampage. They've done whatever it is that they've done. I don't see them as... It's a social construct, but we don't see them as an individual. And that comparison that you've made, you said, what could be deeper? That you in your position would want to take out whatever frustrations you're feeling to take them out on somebody else who may have been innocent in their trade. So what is this thing? Because it's a lot deeper than the gun and the book and the desk and the car. It's deeper than that, and it's the thing inside. But if you don't heal people, you're not going to have a healthy society.
You can't heal people, because I have a nephew who is now doing NYS. That's a low-level paramilitary training in this country. And he told me the number of caning he got every day as a normal training regimen. Then I asked him, what is the objective of this paramilitary training? He said, tunakuondoa ujinga na uraia. Ujinga na uraia, which means in the mind of our security forces, you find that raia these are citizens. Being a citizen and
civilian.
being ujinga, those are things that go hand in hand. And so this curriculum is designed to beat you. It's
break
designed
you.
to meet violence at a large scale, But they don't think that policing that is primarily designed to break will first break the police, because as you already know, there's a massive mental health crisis within the police force.
Yes.
When I was admitted at Chiromo, in the room I had 3 other police officers who also admitted with me. And those are the people who we are saying are taking care of our very most vital role, which is security. So I think we must also begin to call the police and let them see that the only sustainable way to police in this country is a policing that upholds human rights and upholds human dignity. This idea that you have to beat people and shoot them and completely suppress them
and kill them,
this thing we will have such a broken country. Like, South Africa, we will have such a broken country that will not be able to afford it. So we'll just be saying now, let's hire more private security, let's give private security guns, let us have higher walls, let us have electric fences, because the men who are presiding over these things, they themselves have not healed. They themselves have not dealt with their childhood trauma. They themselves have not processed and seen the impact of the decisions they make, which are policy decisions, which are now government policies, and eventually how it breaks the nation.
You see, there is the aspect of the men have been told not to cry and whatnot. Then there is the women on the other side who have been emboldened to be stronger. What a man can do, a woman can do better. But now it is a point where we realize the disconnect that has, and the need to equally bring men on the table to be able to have this conversation. So then how do we involve women to be supporters of men, even as we seek for solutions among men?
It's by first normalizing and being able to see them as human beings, not just as men, and to label as per what society has done all through, because we'll not be doing them any just, and we'll just be like those people who stereotype the men and say that women empowerment, it's all about competing with men. It's also a show of self-compassion, first from where you are as a man. It's okay to be where I am, and I am so much broken, and to be able to recognize our emotions. Many are the time that we don't. We will think it's about other people. I am angry, I'm bitter. You just need to call and have a name to the emotion that you're going through. Then from there, be able to say, how have I changed? What resonated to this? Like, have I just woken up like this? Have you woken up just angry? Have you woken up just happy? Get to know. Also, let's look at the coping mechanism. I like the way we are discussing about men. It's also good to talk about men and suicide cases, because that's something and a topic that we really talk about. Now, statistics shows that that is the global statistic, that globally, as per WHO, we have 740,000 cases that have been reported within, a year. That is suicidal cases, which means every 43 seconds we are losing a human being on suicide. Then when we break it down and we say, let's look at men, the ratio of men to women in this, and you realize close to 80% it's men. And the question is, how comes men's statistic is actually growing? Before we were talking about like close to 76%. How comes it's still growing? It's because we are not able to allow them to extend the grace and say, it's okay, they can come and they can share. So the first call I can do to men out there, it's okay to feel the way you are feeling. It's okay to have disturbing thoughts. But it's not okay to keep quiet about it. Because if you do, it will lead to a maladaptive behavior, alcoholism, addiction. Like at All Smiles, we run a rehabilitation center, and I can tell you ever the highest percentage is men who come in because of substance use. And why? Because for them, they were taught the only way I can cope with this is by maladaptive behavior.
Right.
I need to take in substance for me to cope with what I'm going through.
And through all this, there is definitely something that can be done. Time doesn't allow us the luxury of then being able to go into these conversations deeper. But once that, we must continue having. We can't have a one-time conversation and then not talk about it again. But in the meantime, I want to thank you both for being here. Trizah Kainika, the psychologist and CEO of All Smiles Therapy Center, and Danish Odongo, host of Man's Perspective Africa. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being open. Thank you for being honest. And let's keep talking. Good morning.
This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.